Hi everyone, I'm back for another episode of Let's Talk About It with Bailey Moody. Bailey, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited about it.
So I just want to get started with your journey as an athlete and what led you to the Paralympics, just, you know, relatively briefly. I know there's probably a ton to it.
Yeah, just keeping it brief. I've always loved sports. I was a jock from day one. Basketball was my first love. When I was 10, I started to experience some pretty severe knee pain in my right knee and some swelling that then, after a lot of scans and about 6 weeks of pain, ended up with a diagnosis of osteosarcoma, which is a form of bone cancer that's common in children. And from there, I basically, as a 10-year-old, a fourth grader, was thrust into this world of chemotherapy and doctors and nurses, and just not something a kid is used to. And pulled out of my sports career, out of my favorite things that I love to do. And, through that, the goal was always, I need to get back to basketball. Like, what can I do to get back to basketball? I was given three options. They had to surgically remove the tumor in my leg at some point in the process. And I ended up choosing this form of amputation just because it would allow me to be active again. And that is what I wanted after chemo. From there, I did so much rehab, so much physical therapy, got back to playing stand-up athletics, really loved it. I was playing volleyball. I played volleyball into my first year of high school, was playing stand-up basketball, playing tennis, doing all the things, being active. And then in seventh grade, things changed a little bit just because I loved basketball so much. Somebody with one leg is just not going to be as fast at getting up and down the court and turning. And so people were getting faster, and I was working hard and I was keeping up fine, but I was losing the love of the game. Seventh grade, I found wheelchair basketball, and kind of the rest is history. I jumped in a wheelchair and I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with the sport again. The opportunities opened back up to play in college and play at an international level. And so it literally never looked back after that. And I really could have kept playing stand up volleyball with my high school team, but basketball just, the opportunities opened, and that was the end of that.
Wow, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, the first thing I'm thinking is we have this kind of recurring theme and value on the podcast of looking inward and just kind of evaluating yourself and your needs and also the things around you, um, both in actual life and how you're doing, but especially in sports. And what you're saying about, hey, I loved basketball and you were really competitive with it, and just looking around and saying, like, hey, I don't feel like I'm moving as fast as the other people on the court. I want to put myself in a better position. I think that's really humble, and like a really interesting perspective that you're taking.
Choosing to amputate my leg was a means of also getting back to sports, but also I just wanted to live an active life. I want to be
Mhm.
able to bike and run and hike and do all the things and be outside and not have to worry about the consequences of maybe a full knee replacement, which was one of my other options of like being having to like breaking that joint or having to have another surgery to fix as I grew. And just with the amputation, it wouldn't I wouldn't have had any of those things. And so yeah, it's looking at the longevity of that. I don't sit around, and I also haven't experienced anything where it hasn't been something that I couldn't do. Like, sometimes
Mhm.
I have to adapt. There's things that come up where I can't do it exactly the same as somebody with two legs, but I've learned to just think about things from a little bit of a different angle. For example, like being on the water, on the lake, like wake surfing and doing those things require a little bit of adaptation, but it's something that you just have to be ready to overcome that adversity and try something a little bit differently than maybe somebody with two legs would do it. And so I've had to learn to kind of navigate the wheelchair as well over the years. And because I'm not in it every day, I don't have the same skills as somebody that does. And so that is an element of the game that is a little more technical, but something I definitely have to work on and work hard to get good at.
Wow, I feel like I'm already learning so much. Like I tried to do some research before, our interview and just in general. But I like you're really explaining a lot for viewers. I hope that people are getting, something out of this. I don't think people recognize the variations in wheelchair basketball or in the Paralympic games in general, where everyone has, how would you best explain it? Like a different level of a certification, or what was the word that you used?
Classification for disability. So, yeah, so I get asked a lot, just the nature of basketball, what position do you play? And something I try and educate people on is that I would, instead of giving you the position I play, I would give you my classification that I've been assigned, because that is it kind of dictates how you play. Every para sport has a classification just based on your disability, based on your level of impairment. Which basically means just how much function you have. For wheelchair basketball specifically, we have a point system. So it runs from a 1.0 to a 4.5 in 0.5 increments. The more points you're assigned, so closer to a 4.5, the more function you have. So the less impaired you are physically. For example, a 1.0 would be somebody that maybe has a really high spinal cord injury, versus like a 4.5 is somebody that has really good function of all four of their limbs, maybe a below the knee amputee, something like that. So I am a 4.0, so just below 4.5. And this is true across the board. In if you see in the Paralympics, instead of putting somebody's position, they'll put their classification. You can see it in track, swimming, basketball. It's just a little bit different terminology on how we describe things, because based on your classification is kind of how you play.
I see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for clearing that up. Based off what you just said with the classifications and all of that, it sounds like, like the basis for the Paralympic Games for para sports in general is pretty intact. It is pretty established, but I can imagine that there's still some things missing. What's accessibility in sports really like today, and where maybe should we be?
Yeah, I harp on this a lot with people when they ask me this question, because we're really not where we need to be in the collegiate setting. Team USA is really, we've gotten to this point where it's pretty even, and the Paralympics are really well recognized. The Olympics obviously are really well recognized. I think as we trend towards LA 2028, it'll get even better. But as far as like being in the collegiate setting, we're not NCAA, so we aren't legally obligated to have the same resources as other athletes on campus. So even though my program, we have our own facility, we have everything that we need as athletes, we are completely separate from being under the umbrella of athletics on the University of Alabama. All of the resources that we have are privately funded and outside of that. So athletics at the University of Alabama has nothing to do with that. So because of that, because we aren't under that umbrella, we can't do things like eat in the athlete dining hall or have the recovery resources or the mental health resources that the other athletes on campus have. So with that, I think we are at a bit of a disadvantage, even though we have worked really hard from our program standpoint of like making it as even of an experience for the para collegiate athletes that we can. However, it's really not anywhere close to the other athletes. And I would even say Alabama is a far front runner, like compared to other college campuses. So that is definitely something that there is a ton of room for improvement in, and something that people just really aren't aware of as well.
What is kind of the makeup of options for playing in college with wheelchair basketball?
So with wheelchair basketball, it's recruited like any other collegiate sport. With the kind of the high school division of wheelchair basketball, you have these huge tournaments where there's basically every team is there. So it is very similar to like a club volleyball situation. With volleyball, it's like hundreds of teams. With basketball, it's like between 50 and 75 teams.
Okay.
Per age group. So coaches will come to those and just watch game after game after game and recruit players and start talking to them. And we have similar rules as far as can't talk to an athlete until like a certain amount of time. And we have scholarships through the university that are donor funded. So it's very similar to like being offered a scholarship. So I was recruited by multiple universities. I went on multiple different trips. My top runners were University of Alabama, University of Illinois in Champaign, University of Texas at Arlington, and then I looked at Auburn briefly. However, Auburn does not have a women's team at the moment, so I would have had to play on the men's team. But it all looks, the recruitment process looks very, very similar to what it would look like in any other collegiate sport.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. I just feel like I'm constantly, not so much maybe media. I definitely think we don't see like para sports like in the media often, except for like a one-off commercial, or honestly, I see you on Instagram and different things that you're doing. But I'm just saying, like it's built out. I mean, I'm not going to say it's similar, but like I'm thinking of like how women's sports and people are like, oh well, it's not built out, and they're not good enough, and they don't deserve they don't deserve investment because they're not showing up. Like there's a whole infrastructure from, it sounds like high school and probably even middle school, all the
Mhm.
way up to the act like to Paralympics, like Olympic Games. Where do you feel like the disconnect is then for the media attention or just people, you know, watching like these sports and like, following these athletes?
It's so interesting that you say it like that because, well, one, I think that like para sports are in a very similar position that women were before Title IX was a thing.
Hmm.
We're getting a lot of the same excuses. We're being told a lot of the same things. We don't have a lot of legislation that's regulating certain things. And so, with that, I think that we can and have the potential, especially with LA 2028 coming, this boom in awareness that I think is building to a point. I just don't think we're quite there yet.
Hmm.
As far as just people knowing about them and people getting excited about them, because everybody that I know that has come to a game on campus keeps coming back because they love it so much. And people have this idea of what wheelchair basketball looks like in their heads. And then they come and they watch and they're like, this is way more physical and fast than I could have ever thought that it was.
Right.
So it's just getting people in the door and letting them see what we do and see how competitive it is and see how physical it is and how hard we train. And then I think that that comes where they realize the level, the caliber of athlete that we are.
Oh my gosh, I have so many different things in my head that I want to ask you about and talk to you about right now. But you brought up legislation. I want to talk about that a little bit more. I have really got my start in the sports industry with legislation specific to Title IX, and which is a gender equity bill. What are the gaps in legislation right now for para athletes?
I think we're missing everything. I don't think there's really anything. We're missing it. Like they're schools aren't going to start to allow for this until they're like legally mandated
Right.
to, and that is just where we're at because really we don't bring in the money. Really football and basketball are the only sports that really bring in money at universities. But we really don't have anything that is protecting us right now.
Let's say we get on a, I send some emails, and we get on a call right now, legislative call with one of the offices that I've worked with. What's the first thing that you're talking about as a change, something that you want to see?
I think athletic programs should be required to offer the same resources to athletes with disabilities that they offer athletes without disabilities.
Hmm. I feel like the media often focuses on para athletes as inspirational rather than elite competitors. Has that been your experience? How do you feel about it? I just want to hear all about that.
Yes, I try when people call me an inspiration to take the opportunity to appreciate what they're saying and what they mean, but also try and educate a little bit if I get the opportunity. A lot of people don't even think about it, so I like being asked this question. But I think you just need to check where you're coming from when you call somebody an inspiration. So, like, a lot of pro athletes get called an inspiration all the time for their work ethic, for what they've accomplished. Like, people that do not have a disability do get called inspirations. That's great. Not knocking the word. However, I like to bring up the example of like if I'm in a gym training in my chair and I'm like doing conditioning or I'm shooting or whatever, if I'm on one basket in the gym and there's another collegiate athlete who's standing up, who's training for stand up basketball for their college, and they're doing the same training program as me, they're working just as hard as me, but we're on separate ends of the floor. Are you going to stop that athlete that's standing up and training and be like, oh my gosh, you're such an inspiration. It's awesome that you're doing this while they're just in the gym training? Because I've been stopped before and told that. Like, they're doing what they can for their sport and you're going to look at them and be like, oh, they're training for their sport, they're training hard, that's awesome, they're putting in the work and it's going to pay off for them, versus looking at me and being like, oh my gosh, it's so great that she's out there and
Mhm.
it's so great that she can be active and do all these things when like I'm out there training to be successful in my sport just like the person that's standing up is. So just checking where you're coming from when you call somebody an inspiration. Typically the people with disabilities think it's just because you're excited that they're out there and that they're like not sitting around doing nothing. We're living our lives. If you call somebody that is in a wheelchair an inspiration just for being out at the grocery store doing their grocery shopping, like they're not necessarily going to take that super well. So it's
Mhm.
just being careful about the setting and like why you're saying what you're saying.
My first thought when you say that too was like, who are you saying it for? Like, are you saying it because you want that person to feel inspired and excited and you want to like uplift them? Or are you saying it because you've never seen this before and you don't want to be awkward and you feel like you need to address this thing that's going on or something too? I don't know.
Right.
It's
And
kind
like, are you saying it because they like, you want them to be like, yeah, you got out of bed today? Or like, are you really like, yeah, it, yeah, I agree.
yeah. Okay, so then I want to ask then about that too. So, in general, when there's a difference in privilege or an opportunity in kind of all things in life, there's situations where you might be the only one representing your group of people, right? Like me as a black woman, like there's times where I'm the only black girl in the room or the only black person in the room. I'm sure for you there's times when you're the only para athlete in the room or you're the only person that competes in a wheelchair. How does that affect your mental health or the way that you show up in a room? Do you feel extra responsibility or extra attention on you when you're the only one?
It definitely feels that way. I've purposefully put myself in some positions where I am the only para athlete in the room because I don't feel like, for example, the Meta NIL program, like I was the only para athlete in that cohort, and that's I purposefully put myself in that position because I want to be one of the ones fighting for this space where para athletes are noticed and valued and seen for their what they're doing and what they're accomplishing and how they're competing. And so I do feel like that sense of responsibility there. It is also just in general daily life when you walk into a room and you're the only one that has a very noticeable disability. I know there are invisible disabilities, but mine is not hard to hide. So if I walk into a room, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm the only amputee in the room oftentimes. I wouldn't say that it doesn't necessarily negatively affect my mental health in a sense of like disrupting my daily life or how I think or what I do, but it is something I'm aware of all the time, and I'm really thankful for what I've been through and what I have because there's a story there and there's a story to tell. Um, but I do often think about it.
Yeah, I can imagine. We have to have a conversation about branding and NIL and in a sense, which I understand that it's called NIL, but I think it's such a buzzword because what it really is just giving athletes the opportunity to monetize the same way any other person in the world can monetize. How has your brand and social media impacted your own life as an athlete and then the community as a whole?
It's been a huge foundation for me, and I'm still growing, and really the best way to monetize in this setting right now is to be prominent on social media, and that's how you make your money. And so with that, you do need to be good at social media and you do need to be posting and be doing all these things, but also what a platform. Like I have people that are following me that are aware of my story. I have people that are following me that don't know my story, but I posted some like trendy thing and they thought the backwards foot was fun and so they followed me. So it's like how can I use this to engage people but also to educate them a little bit because I think I'm one of the top 2 most followed wheelchair basketball athletes in the world. And so with that, people can be educated on wheelchair basketball and maybe my videos will pop up in their For You page and then they'll click on it and they'll follow me and they'll see all of these things and maybe learn something about wheelchair basketball in the process. So my brand is definitely sports specific just because that is my whole life, but also I am interested in telling my story and kind of giving off this vibe of I want people to know that I'm genuine and authentic and not like changing things too much about myself. I just want them to see me on social media.
You have carried the weight of informing us, of educating us, of supporting us through this entire conversation. What are some things that listeners can do to support you and to advocate for para athletes?
Watch us play. Uh, whether that be online, whether that be in person if you can. There are colleges that have teams. There's colleges that have swimmers that are para athletes, track and field athletes. So you can watch for sure, and you can support. I think building that excitement for the Paralympics as it comes to the US in a few years is something that anybody can support in, because it is coming. Kind of how that wave of women's sports has been going, where people have been resharing, people have been watching, like that's how it's got to be for para athletics as well.
That's amazing. Are there specific websites? Is it just on ESPN? Like, where can people watch?
Yeah, you're gonna have to go to the specific college website. So Bama Adapted, we stream all of our stuff. You can watch Alabama wheelchair basketball, and then like wheelchair track and field, wheelchair tennis from there. Honestly, it'll start coming up on your social media and your feed if you start telling the algorithm that's what you want to see.
You don't have to do something crazy, write Bailey a letter or anything like that. Just maybe give her a follow on Instagram.
Yeah, give me a follow. That'd be great.
If you see her come up on your For You page, watch the video. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Bailey. I love talking with you.
It was so fun. Thank you, Sydney.
Hey guys, it's Sydney. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk About It. If you did, make sure to leave a review and send it to a friend. Let's keep this conversation going. I'll see you guys next week.